Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to You. I hope you're looking forward to this revision blast, this live stream aimed at macroeconomic topics for GCSE Economics. Now, paper one, hope it went okay for you. I asked the question in the chat, one or two answers coming back. I hope it's gone well for you. Now, anyway, we can concentrate very much on paper two. So tonight and on Thursday night, we've got these half-hour sessions on various macroeconomic topics. If you've not been to one of these before, we've got a series of very fast-paced activities, some of which will just require a one-letter answer if it's multi-choice, and some will require slightly longer answers. We would love to know your thoughts and your responses. Please do use the chat window if you want to join in with the questions tonight. We'd love to see them. The PowerPoint we're using tonight to deliver the questions will be available for you to download pretty much as soon as this live stream is finished. And this is all being recorded, so you can always watch it again. And if you are watching this on replay, a very warm welcome to you. Now, tonight I'm joined by Nikki on the left-hand side of the screen and Peter on the right-hand side. Good evening, both.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone.
Right, I think we're ready. Shall we get cracking?
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks very much. So we've got some true or false questions here for you to start off with. All we'd like in the chat window is a smiley face for true, or a T, or a sad face for false, or an F. Okay. So the purpose of this is just to give you some context that you could use in longer answer questions. So for the last 5 years, the UK has generally had a surplus in its current account of the balance of payments. Is that true or is that false? So really quick, there's Ollie coming through with false. Great start. And Luca. Everyone so far thinks pretty unanimous that the answer is false. And there's a sad face coming up from Musa. Let's take a look at the answer, please, John. Let's see if we are correct. Is it true or is it false? Indeed. Right, some really good contextual knowledge and understanding. And there's Caroline and Ian coming in as well with false. So it's mainly been in deficit. In 2023, as you can see on the screen, we did have a current account deficit. And if we measure this in terms of a percentage of our GDP, our gross domestic product, that accounted for approximately 3.3%. Now, if we break down the components of the current account, we had a surplus in our trade in services. So exports of services were higher than imports of services, but we had quite a significantly large deficit in terms of our trade in goods. Okay, great start. Let's take a look at the next question. Okay, so the UK's current base rate, the main interest rate that's set by the central bank, the Bank of England, is at its highest. It's as high as it's been for the last 15 years. What do we think here? Is this true or false? Right, so Ollie, I think, is the first answer there with true. Great work. Not revealing the answer yet, but it seems that this has been quite a topical story, and no doubt quite a few of you will have covered this probably in recent lessons with your teachers as you've been revising some of the core macro content. Luca thinks it's true too. Of course, the interest rate decision was made. It was last Thursday. Moose is agreeing as well with a nice smiley face, loving the enthusiasm that's coming with that one. Right, shall we take a look at the answer? Really important, of course, with regard to our discussions of monetary policy. Okay, how we manage the rate of inflation, or rather, I should say how the Bank of England manages the rate of inflation in the United Kingdom. So, currently stands at 5.25%, set in August 2023. I think this is around about this same interest rate when I was sitting my A levels. I know we were on a GCSE call back in, I won't tell you the year. In March 2009, the base rate was at 0.5%, and it didn't go up until 1%. Or higher until May 2022. So that's a significant amount of time that we've been used to low interest rates in the UK. So we're now starting to feel the consequences, and there's some generations that have been persistently used to low interest rates. Of course, my parents, I think, 5% interest rates was the norm, 15% even at one point. Where can we use this in any long answer question about monetary policy? This could be quite useful to have up your sleeve. Okay. Question number 3. Since February 2024, the UK's inflation rate now meets the Bank of England's target rate. Is this true or false? Smiley face if you think, yep, we're all good, we're on target with our rate of inflation, or false if you think we've still got some way to go. Luke is the first one here, coming in with false. For a question like this, obviously we are sort of having a little bit of we're assuming that we all know what the target rate of inflation is. Moose is coming in with a sad face too. Let's see if there's anyone else out there. If you know what the Bank of England's target rate of inflation is, you might want to pop that in the chat window as well. That would just show some excellent contextual knowledge and understanding. Do we know what the target rate of inflation is? We've got 2 falses just come through. Thanks, folks. Great. Well, Audrey's in there with 2%. Luca then says 2% plus or minus 1%. That corridor that inflation could fall out of. So really great context there. Let's take a look. Thanks, John. Okay, so yes, well done. 100% success rate there. The inflation's rate is falling. In October 2022, it was over 11%, but by March it had fallen to 3.2%. So it's still a long way off its target. We're almost at plus or minus, but we are still off target. Now, just little sort of caveat I always want to remember, if we can see on screen there that inflation was 11%, it's fallen to 3.2%. Prices are still rising, just at a falling rate. Don't fall into that trap that some students have in the past that say prices are falling. Okay. Sorry, Nikki, I should have given you a cue there. Over to you. Sorry, that's my fault.
That's all right. Right, okay. So we've got 5 multiple choice questions coming up now. So what I'm looking for in the chat window is letters A, B, C, or D, depending on what you think the answer is. So let's dive straight in this evening. We've got lots to do as always. Ollie's here before I've read the question out. Well done. Which of the following is likely to lead to cost push inflation in the UK? So remember, when you're talking about inflation, try to always separate it out between cost push or demand pull. Think about the cause of the inflation. So Ollie was straight out the track with D. Luca with D, Musa with D, Nitin with D. Everybody seems to be agreeing that high inflation in countries that export raw materials to the UK is likely to cause cost push inflation in the UK. And you are spot on. Fantastic start with this first multiple choice. Let's have a look at number 2. Which type of unemployment occurs if an aircraft maintenance firm closes because of recession? So just while you're having a think about that, again, try not to write the word unemployment without writing in front of it frictional, cyclical, structural, or seasonal, depending on what the question's about. We examiners absolutely love it. We love it when you know your different types of unemployment. So Ollie said B, Nitin said B. You seem to think it's cyclical. Luca thinks it's B as well. I think you are absolutely on fire tonight, you guys. So yes, it is. The type of unemployment, if the firm closes because of recession, is cyclical. It's to do with the business cycle or the trade cycle. Well done, 2 out of 2. Let's move on. Which of these would be considered a benefit of a free trade agreement between the UK and an emerging economy? Now be careful, because look at the question carefully. It's a free trade agreement and it's an emerging economy. So let's have a look and see. It could lead to an increase in the deficit on the balance of payments current account. Domestic industries might have to make employees redundant. Domestic economy will reduce diversity, or increased domestic competition could drive prices down. So what have we got coming through? Ollie says D, Lucas says D, Musa says D, Nitin says D. We got you guys, you 4 guys answering working hard. What about some others? Would you like to, Audrey, we saw you answering earlier. Perhaps you'd like to put in an answer. What do we think it is? Is it a benefit because increased domestic competition, so that competition from those emerging economies would drive down prices for UK or domestic customers and households? Answer is D. Well done, everyone. That's fantastic. Oh, don't worry, GoHawk or Ollie. It's absolutely fine. We love having you here anyway. Okay, we're on to question number 4. Price stability is a government macroeconomic objective because, now we want price stability for what reason? Is it because predictable inflation indicates low unemployment? Is it because stable price level helps producers and consumers to plan spending? Or stable prices mean imports are more affordable? Or is it a predictable inflation rate generates higher wages? Lucas says B. Ollie, you're thinking B. What else? Anybody else coming in? Anybody else wanting to try and answer? So why do we want price stability? What is it about having stable prices in an economy? Musa saying B. Aman saying B. Well done for coming in with an answer. I think you are all absolutely right. We like it because we can plan our consumption, but producers, more importantly, can plan their investment, and investment leads to growth. And growth is what we're after in the economy. So we need price stability first, and then we can hopefully get growth through investment. Right, my last multiple choice question coming up. Which of the following is the most accurate definition of supply side policies? Supply side policies. Remember, you've got 3 policies to revise: monetary policy, Peter's already talked about, fiscal policy, and supply side policy. policy. So Ollie is saying B. He believes it's policies that aim to increase the supply of goods and services in an economy. Do we agree with Ollie? So let's see what else is coming through. Luke is saying B. What else do we think? Who else is going to come up with an answer? Moose is saying B. Okay, this is a case of read the question carefully, guys. That's in there. Answer B is in there as the distractor. It's the one that's nearly right. Supply side policies don't aim to increase the supply of goods and services. They aim to increase the productive capacity of the economy. So be very, very careful. Muslim got it right. Ollie, you jumped in a bit quick. So it's just a little lesson. Don't jump in too fast. Take time to read the question. Hand back to Peter.
Okay, so let's lead nicely into a chart you can see on screen about productivity. Okay, so here you can see relative productivity for the UK. Of course, productivity is output per worker in a given time period. So you can just see some real world data here. The USA, 49% more productive than workers in the UK, and France, 17% more productive. So when Nikki was discussing supply side policies, a key element of supply side policies, of course, to raise the productive capacity of the economy, improve the quality and quantity of our factors of production, but at the same time raise productivity rates, because that is key to achieving long run economic growth. So bear in mind that could be something useful. We're going to take that a little bit further now and ask you to categorize some supply side policies. What should go under the umbrella? So what I'd like to pop in the chat window is the numbers that you think should be placed under the umbrella that are UK supply side policies. And you've got until the end of the tunes. Okay, so we've got we've seen one answer in the chat so far. Okay, where we think 4 and 5. We'll just see if there's any more coming through. Just out of curiosity, I wonder if there's any that people would eliminate straight away. Which of those aren't supply side policies? Moose has come up with 1, 2, and 4. And Nitan with 1, 4, and 5. Let's just have a look. I'm gazing into the chat window here to see if any more pop up. So thanks for those contributions so far. Let's take a look at the answers, John. I know folks, there's quite a lot to read there, but this could be really useful in a context where you are looking at a piece of data and you are trying to identify various supply side policies that improve the productive capacity of the economy. Yeah, so Musa, you're absolutely correct. 7 is monetary policy, because we're manipulating interest rates to affect inflation. So regulations, if we reduce them to allow more land to be used for house building, so make the supply of houses, make it easier for builders to build houses, and increase the productive capacity that way. Planning regulations in the UK are assumed by some to be a little bit bureaucratic with lots of rules and regulations. Number 4 there, providing families with free childcare for those who are above 2 years old. That would incentivise more parents to return to the workplace. Increase the number of visas. That one we're really targeting the quantity of the labour force, making it easier for people to come to the UK and supply their labour to meet the demand. Number 1, the minimum wage. Increasing the minimum wage, that would incentivise more people to work. maybe work more hours as well, and that would increase the amount of goods and services that are produced in the longer term. But remember, we always need to tie this one back to productive capacity. Thinking about the HS2 railway, okay, given that that'll finish at Euston Station, what we're really looking for this point is thinking that this is improving the quality of infrastructure, maybe making it easier for workers to commute to certain places in the country to take up jobs where there is a demand for what they produce. And finally, removing bonus caps. Again, the thought here is a little bit similar to the minimum wage point, but we're really looking at two different groups of workers. With a bonus cap, it might incentivize more risk taking by particular businesses, and therefore the productive capacity of the economy could increase in the longer term as you've got greater levels of enterprise and greater levels of risk taking. So, thanks for the contributions. Quite a tricky one there. There's probably some that you could pick out that would help you in the longer term.
Right, now we're on to the bubble quiz. I absolutely love the bubble quiz, as you know. So what we're looking for, we've got a question coming up, and then we're looking for answers. Now, the number of answers that could be correct can range from 0, none of them, to all 4. So what I'm looking for in the chat window are the correct answers. Do you think it's A? Do you think it's B? Do you think it's C? Do you think it's D? Do you think it's all of them? So let's start with a nice easy one to get going. Which of these are measures of economic growth? Economic growth. So one of the early topics you think about when you're looking at macro moves us straight in with B and C. So let's have a look. Anybody think any of the others are measures of economic growth? Indeed, is it both B and C? Or Alex is saying it's C. Just C. Do you agree with Musa? Do you agree with Alex? Let's have some more answers coming through. What do you think? Lotus flower, B and C. You think it is? I think you are Marge's 43, B and C. Anaga, you say B and C. So let's have a look, John. I think you are spot on. You are spot on. Claimant count board is a measure of the number of people unemployed. So it measures the number of people claiming unemployment benefit, job seekers allowance. Okay, let's crack on to number 2. Which of these could impact positively on economic growth? So which of these will have a positive impact and positive influence on economic growth? Which of these will generate economic growth? An increase in the size of the working population, availability of a new natural resource, greater use of technology, or greater levels of investment? What do you think, guys? So Atrox says A, B, C, and D. Board, you say A, B, and D. So you're missing out C. You're saying not C. Alex says all. Nitin says C and D. C is debatable, in your opinion. Okay. Sophelius says all of them. Marge says all of them. Let's have a look and see. Let's see who's right here, because there's lots of answers coming through this time. You are spot on. Look at that. So yes, A, B, and C, and D. C is greater use of technology. So think about more use of AI, artificial intelligence, for example. It's really increasing production and it's increasing productivity. Make sure you know the difference before your exam. So greater use of technology does increase output. Right, which of these could lead to a fairer distribution of income? A fairer distribution of income. Would it be expanding the range of goods and services that include a VAT charge? Easing of restrictions on who can qualify for welfare benefits, implementation of a progressive tax system, or an increase in the national minimum wage? Musa says C and D. Let's see, do you agree or do you disagree? Who thinks it could be A? Stephelia says B, C, and D. Nitin says B, C and D. Atrox says just C and D. Board B, C and D. So everybody seems to think it is B and D, but there's some, or most people do, there's some question over B. Can I see the answer, please, John? It is indeed B as well. Easing of restrictions on who can qualify for welfare benefits. So those are the people right at the bottom, if you like, who we are now allowing more people to qualify for those welfare benefits, more people. So they will tend to be the people on the very, very, very low income or just almost on no income. So if we allow more to claim benefits, then that will lift their income upwards and will help us to move towards a fairer distribution of income. Progressive tax system, I'm sure you remember, that's where we tax those on higher incomes more than those on lower incomes. So we're bringing the top income earners down a bit. And then an increase in the national minimum wage. Again, we're lifting those on lower incomes a little bit higher. To answer B, C and D. Okay, my last one on the bubble quiz. Which of these would be an impact on UK consumers from a rising exchange rate? We've got a rising exchange rate. Now, you might know that as a strengthening exchange rate or a appreciating exchange rate. So read the question carefully. What's an impact on UK consumers from a strengthening exchange rate? So let's see, how good is your exchange rate knowledge? Have you revised this far ahead yet? Let's see those answers. We've got some answers coming in. Let's see, what do you think? Sophelius, tough question, says John. You are absolutely right. Sophelius says A, B and D. So cheaper imported goods, you believe cheaper travel costs for UK citizens travelling abroad and lower interest rates due to falling prices. Interesting. That last one is difficult. Marge says A and B. Atrox says A and B. Sophelius, you're changing your mind. You're thinking about it. I like it when people think about these questions. Musa, A and B. Well done. So let's have a look and see, John, what do we think? It's definitely imported cheaper goods. That's the easy one. Cheaper travel costs for UK citizens travelling abroad. Again, if we've got a strengthening exchange rate, it makes it easier, it makes it cheaper when we travel abroad to that country. Lower inflation due to falling prices for imported goods. That's very true, but that is making the assumption we import a lot from that from abroad, and then lower interest rates due to falling prices. So that comes back to our monetary policy again. We need less contractionary monetary policy because import prices are causing our general price level to fall. That is a tough question. Well done those of you who answered that and thought about that. Okay, we're moving straight on to on balance. So remember in your exam, always give a counterbalance to your arguments. Try and balance your answers to give sophisticated level responses. So give an advantage and a disadvantage to the UK from its 2023 free trade agreement with Australia. So let's just stick with advantages at the moment, because otherwise the chatbot fills up and it takes too long for you to answer. So I want an advantage one advantage to the UK of its 2023 free trade agreement with Australia. That kicked in on the 31st of May 2023, so we've had it for nearly 1 year now, coming up to the 1 year anniversary. You may know that we import quite a lot of red meat from Australia, and particularly beef and lamb, and that seems to be going well. Today, the news today is that legal and technical services are also being expanded, so we can start using Australian lawyers, be able to import those without tariffs. So Atrox is saying wider variety of goods to choose from for consumers. You're absolutely right. So we always were able to import them, but what has happened to the price of them because of the free trade agreement? So Emery is saying more exports. We just qualify your answer always, more exports to Australia because they are now cheaper for Australians to buy from us. Fewer trade restrictions can allow for more globalization from Anargia. I'm sorry if I am mispronouncing and mangling your name there. Fewer trade restrictions, you're absolutely right, allows for more integration, more globalization. Lower prices making imports more accessible, says Swaggy AD0. Lower prices making imports. So let's make sure that you always just qualify your answers. Can I have a look at the advantages we've got, please, John? So what have we decided? We think that there'll be greater demand for UK goods in Australia as they will become relatively cheaper. That magic word, they will become relatively cheaper. We haven't dropped the price of our exports. It's just that Australian importers don't have to spend so much because they're no longer paying their own import tariff on them. Encourages investment in the UK in industries that are likely to benefit from greater trade. So therefore, it's not just Australian businesses, but businesses around the world might think, right, Australia is going to be a great export market for the UK. So let's go and set up inward investment in the UK, set up a factory, create our products there, and then we've got free trade with Australia. So it encourages more investment. Okay, let's have a look at some of the disadvantages. So let's see if we can have a look at some of the disadvantages. Now, we have, remember where this country is, Australia. So if we're starting to trade with them, think about the food miles. I mentioned red meat. Well, you can't put red meat on a boat and wait for it to chug around the world, can you? It would go off. So you're going to have to fly it across. So think about that. Think about what might happen there. Let's see what other disadvantages are there. Remember, if you're taking away the tariff, then perhaps you might not be protecting our own industries quite so much. So let me have your responses. Let me see what you're saying. Let me see what's coming in. So Borders said gives each country a comparative advantage. It doesn't give them a comparative advantage in the first place. It allows them to exploit it more easily. So just be very, very careful with your language there. Samuel says environmental costs of transportation. You're spot on. It's right round the other side of the world. And, are we right to encourage so much trade when we've got, potentially customers and traders right on our doorstep? More CO2 emissions, says Musa. May find it harder to compete, Samuel says. So you're right. Yes, our domestic firms have now got more competition from Australia. Musa could influence dumping. It might do. Remember, dumping is where a country has excess stocks of something and it goes and dumps those excess stocks on a particular country. It could be that Australia might have excess stocks of something and dump it in our country. It could even be beef. So, yes, you're right. Atrox negative externalities, the environment, good. Due to increased ships pollution level, as there are more planes and ships moving, you're absolutely right. We've got more damage to the society. Remember that is, if you're talking about air pollution, could be a micro, but it would be perfectly valid in this particular case as well. Can we have a look at our disadvantages, please, John? So, some UK industries vulnerable to greater competition. Well done, those people who said that. That's absolutely spot on. They're vulnerable to imports, e.g. UK agriculture. Just think, in Australia, they've got that lovely sunshine They can grow things, whereas we wash out all our seeds. Okay. Environmental impact of receiving imports from the other side of the world compared to Europe. Spot on, everybody. You did really, really well on that. Right, I'm handing back to Peter.
Thanks, Nikki. So building on what Nikki's done with you there, we've got a wrecking ball activity just to end with. So you can see a statement on the left-hand side of your screen. We'd like you to pop in the chat window just some brief thoughts about what counter-arguments you could present to wreck this student's response. So here's the response. Persistent economic growth is desirable as it means that everyone should benefit from higher incomes. Right? What can we add in the chat to wreck that argument? So we're really thinking about developing our evaluation skills here. So maybe think about what some of the disadvantages of growth might be, or some of the limitations in the short term. Think about the context of time. See if any pop up. Maybe think about who benefits from the growth and who doesn't. Could we think about different stakeholders in terms of their perspectives? Right, some answers coming through. Great work, for. So Atrox come in and said that economic growth causes inflation, meaning that some people could have a fall in their real income. I think that's a really valid point, and it's technically correct, isn't it? Well done. We've seen that actually over the last 3 years or so. So Moose has said that it could cause inflation, particularly if wages don't increase. Alongside Sam said it can create inequality. In the economy, some people are going to receive high wages and others don't. These are really good responses, folks. Really pleasing to read. I'm just having a look, see if there's anything I've missed on the chat window. Going back to Moose's response, he's mentioned poverty. That's excellent. And Sam touched upon inequality. So we've got those distributional aspects, thinking about different individuals in society and how the gains, the benefits of economic growth might not be shared out equally. Great work. Okay. Arna's come in. Apologies if I haven't pronounced your name correctly there. It might be undesirable for lower wage workers, as there may be more inequality as wealthier people have got a higher value on their assets. So there's lots of themes coming through with regard to inequality there, which is really quite insightful to read. And this idea, folks, you've got this economic agent, the stakeholder perspective, will really serve you well on your exam when it arises. So let's have a look at some of the responses that we came up with. So here's our first one. Right. So we started off with incomes may rise, but it's unlikely that it will happen equally. So those of you who were referring to inequality arguments, you should give yourselves a pat on the back, because that's really well considered. We could consider equality in terms of the distribution of income, like many of you thought about high income earners versus those who are on lower wages or maybe it's the minimum wage. But remember, we could also consider equality with regard to, or inequality, I should say, with regard to where someone lives in the country. So I'm sat here in the northeast of England. Could it be that growth is seen more down in the south of England, the southeast of England? Might the gains from economic growth take longer to reach the good folks of County Durham or Newcastle, for example? So great start there. Let's take a look at our second option. Right, so again, we should be really pleased with the level of the insight and response that you guys have given in the chat window. You should be really pleased with yourselves. It's showing excellent subject knowledge, because here's a one that one of you brought up. I think it was, let me just look back again. I think it was Atrox and Musa. You both sort of touched on this, that if we see inflationary pressures from higher levels of economic growth, think about your aggregate demand curve shifting to the right as our economy sort of operates at a higher level of capacity. That higher level of demand pull inflation will see real incomes fall. So consumers are worse off in real terms. They can't meet their needs and wants, as well as they possibly could have previously, because their real income has been eroded from the effects of higher inflation. Okay, there's one more coming up here. Growth could lead to pollution, which could have an impact on health. Okay, so we're thinking about an externalities style argument here, which some of you, I think, with Nikki's last activity, did allude to some externalities points. So that could be something, if you didn't think along the externalities lines, that could be helpful too. Right, we've got one more. And here we've got a question on a statement on globalization, I should say. So here it is. Globalization, the spread of MNCs, has brought new skills and additional jobs to developing economies. So look at the statement here. We're thinking about developing economies. What counter arguments can you present to wreck this response? So don't worry too much about writing full sentences. Any ideas that you've got in the chat window? I know it takes a long time to type these out, but your responses are really, really welcome. And there's been some excellent effort and thoughts gone into tonight. Really pleasing. Maybe for this, if you're struggling, think about the idea of stakeholders again. Think about if we're thinking with regard to multinational companies, that there's probably going to be already pre-existing businesses that are already producing goods and services, i.e. domestic businesses in those economies. Okay, so Moose has come in. There again with the first answer, thank you. So we could be thinking about the corruption and the impact that governments have. Now, I think we really need to be careful with any statements about corruption. Really, really, really important point. Think about how tax revenue could be used. I think that might be if we're thinking about revenue, always add that element of tax in, Musa, just so that you can enhance and really make your answer focus. But great point. Working conditions too. Atrox has come in with regard to the primary sector. So some works in primary sector industries could be prone to labour exploitation. Indeed. That's quite a topical argument. I'm sure I've read lots of case studies in the past there. So make sure you keep it really focused and always develop the how and the why. Multinationals are unlikely to reinvest in the developing economy and might just be using their cheap labour. So a downside, of course. So we're picking up this idea of dependencies, the fact that multinationals might be relatively exploitative with elements of the factors of production, the labour, the land. Arnie said dependence, which might discourage domestic companies, due to the rise of monopolies. So that multinational might disincentivize production, employment, because it has monopoly power. Really great, insightful responses. Well done, folks. Let's take a look at ours. It's almost like some of you have seen these slides. Really good work again. So local smaller companies could be driven out of business because they're less competitive, because they don't have the resources the MNCs bring with them. Great thoughts in the chat that we can add to this one. Let's take a look at our next point, John. The shift in output because of the way that the MNCs locate production, could it cause an increase in unemployment in more developed economies? So it might be the case that MNC relocates its production facilities from a country in Europe to a developing economy. And therefore, whilst the developing economy sees a gain in employment, actually we see an unintended possible consequence that unemployment in developed economies rises. And we've got one more here, I believe. All slowly getting chipped away. We've still got these distributional aspects that the wealthier economies are the ones that still benefit the most from globalization. So thanks very much for your comments in the chat there, folks.
Indeed, Peter. Thank you to everybody who's participated tonight, given their short answers, given their very long answers in some cases, some tough questions, some fairly straightforward questions. And we've got more of the same coming on Thursday. 5 o'clock again, we'll have a few more on a mixture of different topics. So hopefully you can join us then. If you can't, the best of luck. But I'm going to leave my best wishes until the end of Thursday's session. Quick reminder, the PowerPoint we're using will be available to download pretty much as soon as we've finished this, and this has been recorded. Listen, massive thank you, of course, to both Nikki and to Peter for delivering those activities as well. That's really gratefully accepted. Brilliant stuff, people. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. If you've enjoyed tonight and found it useful, do give us a thumbs up in YouTube. That'll help us get our message out there, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye now.